The phone rang on a Tuesday morning while I sat at my mahogany desk. Financial reports spread before me like a roadmap of 4 decades worth of work. Steam rose from my coffee mug, curling lazily in the September sunlight that poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my home office. At 71 years old, I'd earned these peaceful moments: 3 successful hardware stores across Phoenix, a beautiful home in Paradise Valley, and what I'd believed was a close-knit family that loved me as much as I loved them. The number on my phone screen was unfamiliar, but something made me answer anyway. Perhaps it was instinct. Perhaps it was fate. Perhaps some guardian angel knew I needed to hear what was coming, no matter how much it would shatter the comfortable illusion I'd been living in. Mr. Reynolds. The woman's voice trembled with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. Nervousness, fear, compassion. This is Carolyn Thornton. I photographed your daughter Jacqueline's wedding last month. My heart did a strange little skip. The wedding had been magnificent: $65,000 of perfection at the Botanical Gardens, followed by an elegant reception at one of Scottsdale's most exclusive resorts. Jacqueline had been radiant in her custom gown, and Samuel, her new husband, had been the picture of devotion. Every detail had been flawless, worth every penny to see my eldest daughter so happy. Yes, Carolyn, is everything all right with the photos? Mr. Reynolds, I need to see you immediately, alone. Please don't tell your daughter. Her words came faster now, urgent. I found something in the photographs, something very serious, something you need to see before anyone else does. The office suddenly felt colder, despite the Arizona heat pressing against the windows. What kind of something? I can't explain over the phone, but please, sir, trust me on this. Can you come to my studio tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock? And Mr. Reynolds, come alone. Don't mention this to anyone in your family, not yet. Before I could form a coherent response, my youngest daughter Wendy's voice erupted from somewhere in the house, sharp and demanding. Ben, I told you 3 times already. I need that car. My Honda is absolutely embarrassing. You promised you'd ask him today. I am not waiting anymore. Benjamin's laugh rumbled from the living room, deep and careless, underlaid by the blaring television he never turned down despite my repeated requests. My son-in-law, who wasn't actually my son-in-law, because he and Wendy had been living together in my house for 4 years without ever bothering to make it official. 4 years of rent-free living, of constant demands, of treating my home like a hotel where they just happened to reside. I'll be there, I said into the phone, barely recognizing my own voice. 9 tomorrow morning, your studio downtown. Carolyn exhaled audibly, relief washing through the phone line. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. I am so sorry. I am so very sorry. The line went dead. I sat motionless, phone still pressed to my ear, staring at the framed photograph on my wall. Jacqueline in her wedding dress, absolutely luminous. Samuel beside her in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling at the camera like they'd found paradise in each other 1 month ago. $65,000, worth every penny. I'd told myself as I'd written check after check after check. Something very serious in the photographs. Dad. Wendy materialized in my doorway like an impatient ghost. Phone clutched in one manicured hand, car keys dangling from the other. Did you hear me? I need money for a new car. The Honda is 7 years old, and it is completely humiliating. Melissa just got a brand new Lexus, and I can't keep showing up places in that piece of garbage. I looked at my youngest daughter, 31 years old, living in my house and my guest house, technically for 4 years now. Temporarily, she'd said when she'd moved in after her divorce from a man whose name I could barely remember now. She'd needed time to get back on her feet, she'd said. Find herself, figure out her next move. Benjamin had followed 6 months later, another temporary arrangement that had calcified into permanent residence. No rent, no contribution to utilities, no end date ever discussed. We'll talk about it later, sweetheart, I managed, turning back to my computer screen where numbers had begun to blur into meaningless shapes. Latter, I need to go to the dealership this week, Dad. This week. I've already done the research. I know exactly what I want. Latter, Wendy. She huffed dramatically, a sound she'd perfected in her teenage years and apparently never outgrown, then stomped up the stairs with the subtlety of a small earthquake. A door slammed hard enough to rattle the walls. The house shuddered, then settled back into an uneasy quiet. I picked up my coffee. It had gone cold while I was on the phone, but I drank it anyway, barely tasting it. Through my office window, the Paradise Valley morning stretched bright and cloudless, the kind of perfect Arizona day that usually filled me with gratitude. The pool sparkled unused in the backyard. The guest house where Wendy and Benjamin stayed sat at the far edge of the property, its separate entrance mocking me with its implications of independence they'd never actually claimed. Everything looked normal. Everything felt profoundly wrong. The day crawled forward with agonizing slowness. I tried focusing on quarterly projections, inventory reports for the stores, payroll schedules that needed approval. My mind kept circling back to Carolyn's trembling voice, to the fear I'd heard there, to the words that refused to stop echoing in my head. Something very serious, something you need to see. The wedding had been perfect. I'd been there. I'd watched every moment, Jacqueline glowing as she'd walked down the aisle on my arm, Samuel waiting at the altar, eyes bright with what I'd interpreted as love. The ceremony at sunset, golden light painting everything beautiful. The reception that had lasted until midnight, dancing and laughter and toasts to the happy couple's future. What could possibly be wrong with the photographs? What could Carolyn have captured that I hadn't seen with my own eyes? Around noon, Benjamin wandered into my office without knocking. He never knocked, just walked in like the house was his, like my space was automatically his space, like boundaries were suggestions that didn't apply to him. "Hey, Pops." He leaned against my doorframe, arms crossed in that casual way that somehow always felt aggressive. "Wendy says you were being weird about the car thing." I didn't look up from my computer. I said we'd discuss it later. "Yeah, but she is pretty set on it. You know how she gets." He grinned. Like we were conspirators, like we shared some understanding about managing difficult women. Maybe just give her the money, keep the peace, happy wife, happy life, right? Except she wasn't his wife. They'd been together 4 years, living in my house, and he'd never proposed. Never even mentioned marriage except in these casual references that meant nothing. "Benjamin, I am working." Sure, just saying." He pushed off the doorframe. "Woman, man, they get an idea in their head and it is easier to just go with it, you know." After he left, I stood and walked to my window below. The pool water reflected the brilliant blue sky. The pool guy came every Wednesday, had for 10 years. I paid him. I paid for everything. The guest house utilities, the groceries that filled both refrigerators, the cable bill, the insurance on Wendy's supposedly embarrassing Honda, everything. When had I stopped being a father and become an ATM? When had my love transformed into nothing more than expected financial support for adult children who showed no signs of ever supporting themselves? The afternoon bled into evening with the same unsettling slowness. I heated leftover pasta for dinner, ate alone at my kitchen counter, while Benjamin occupied my living room and Wendy called someone upstairs, her laughter piercing through the ceiling like accusations I didn't yet understand. At 7:30, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door, there stood Jacqueline, my eldest daughter, my successful one, 37 years old, marketing executive at a prestigious firm, always perfectly put together. Tonight she wore a tailored blazer over designer jeans, her makeup flawless, her smile bright and practiced. "Hi, Daddy." She kissed my cheek with practiced warmth and walked past me into the house like she'd been invited. I was in the neighborhood, thought I'd stop by. Paradise Valley to her apartment in Scottsdale wasn't exactly the neighborhood, but I didn't mention it. She settled onto my couch, crossed her legs elegantly, and looked around my living room like she was appraising it, calculating something. "How are you, sweetheart?" "I am wonderful." "You look tired though, Daddy. Are you getting enough rest? Long day? Business things?" She picked up a framed photograph from my side table, her and Wendy as children, maybe 8 and 5, laughing at something long forgotten. She studied it for a moment, then set it back down slightly off-center. A small thing, but it bothered me. "Samuel and I have been house hunting." There it was, the reason for the visit. We found the most incredible place in Scottsdale. 4 bedrooms, gorgeous pool, mountain views. Absolutely perfect for starting a family. Everything we've ever wanted. I sat in the chair across from her, waiting for the inevitable request. "The thing is, we need to move fast. The market's incredibly competitive right now, and places like this don't last long." She smiled, warm and confident. "We need help with the down payment, $40,000. You understand, right? After everything you spent on the wedding, this is just completing the picture, helping us start our life together properly." $40,000, said as casually as if she were asking to borrow my truck for an afternoon. Something in my chest tightened, that hollow feeling from this morning expanding like a void. 40,000, I repeated carefully. Is that a problem? A slight edge entered her voice, barely perceptible, but definitely there. Dad, we need to move fast. I thought you'd want to help us start our married life properly. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The designer clothes that cost more than some people's monthly rent. The manicured nails, professional salon work. The practiced warmth in her eyes that somehow didn't quite reach the depths where real emotion lived. Let me think about it, sweetheart. Her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. Think about it. Dad, this is important. Samuel and I, we've worked so hard. We deserve this house. I need to review some things first. My accounts, my expenses. She stood abruptly, the warmth evaporating from her expression. Fine, but don't take too long. We can't lose this house. She grabbed her designer purse, kissed my cheek again, colder this time, perfunctory, and headed for the door. Love you, Daddy. Call me soon. I watched her Mercedes pull away from my curb, standing in my doorway like a stranger in my own life. $40,000 delivered like I'd already agreed, like my money was automatically her money, like I existed solely to fund whatever she decided she deserved. Benjamin's laughter echoed from the living room. Sports highlights on my television. His beer bottle sweating onto my coffee table without a coaster. I walked back inside, but the house felt different now. Or maybe I was seeing it clearly for the first time in years. The comfortable illusion was cracking, and tomorrow morning, at Carolyn's studio, I suspected those cracks would split wide open. My phone buzzed with a text from Jacqueline. Thanks for understanding about the house. Dad, love you. I hadn't agreed to anything, but she'd assumed, just like she always assumed, just like they all assumed. I picked up the phone and looked at Carolyn's number still in my call log. Tomorrow morning, whatever she'd found in those wedding photographs, I had a feeling it would explain everything. The hollow sensation in my chest, Jacqueline's casual demand for $40,000, Wendy's entitled expectations, the slow transformation from beloved father to human bank account. I left the phone on the hall table and returned to my office, closing the door against the sounds of my own house that no longer felt like home. Sleep was impossible that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle and shift, hearing Benjamin and Wendy's muffled conversation from the guest house, their laughter carrying across the yard. What were they laughing about? What jokes did they share at my expense? I got up at 5, showered, dressed carefully in khakis and a polo shirt. Business casual. Professional armor. I made coffee and stood at my kitchen window, watching the sun rise over the desert hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that should have been beautiful but just felt ominous. I left the house at 8:15 before Wendy woke up, before Benjamin could wander in with another scheme or demand or casual disrespect wrapped in false familiarity. I didn't want questions, didn't want to explain where I was going or why. The drive to downtown Phoenix took 25 minutes in light morning traffic. Carolyn's studio occupied a converted warehouse in the Arts District, her name on a brass plate beside an industrial-looking door. I parked across the street and sat in my truck for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to prepare myself for whatever waited inside. Whatever Carolyn had found, it would change things. I knew it with absolute certainty. The question was how much, and in what ways, and whether I'd be strong enough to handle the truth. I crossed the street and pressed the buzzer. The studio smelled like coffee and printer ink and something else I couldn't quite identify, anticipation maybe, or dread. Professional photographs lined the exposed brick walls. Weddings, families, corporate headshots, all beautiful, all capturing moments that were supposed to matter. Carolyn met me at the door. She looked younger than I'd remembered from the wedding day, mid-40s perhaps, with nervous hands and apologetic eyes that couldn't quite meet mine directly. Mr. Reynolds, thank you for coming. She locked the door behind me with a decisive click. I have everything set up in the editing room. I followed her through the gallery space into a smaller room dominated by a large monitor and expensive-looking computer equipment. Wedding portfolios were stacked neatly on shelves. The single window overlooked an alley where morning light filtered through dusty glass, turning everything slightly sepia-toned. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I am fine. I wasn't fine. I was standing on the edge of something that felt like a cliff. Please just show me. She nodded and sat at her computer. I remained standing behind her chair, close enough to see the screen clearly but far enough to maintain some psychological distance from whatever was coming. Mr. Reynolds, I want you to know, I almost didn't call you. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard without moving. I went back and forth for days. I thought maybe it wasn't my business. Maybe I should just delete the photos and pretend I never saw them. But if I were in your position, I'd want to know. No matter how much it hurt, I'd want to know the truth. My throat tightened. Show me, Carolyn. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, the monitor filled with images from Jacqueline's wedding, the ceremony. My daughter walking down the aisle on my arm, her face radiant with what I'd believed was joy. Samuel waiting at the altar, hands clasped, expression solemn and loving, guests smiling, flowers perfect, everything beautiful, everything as I'd witnessed it. These are the standard shots, Carolyn said softly. What you saw at the wedding, what everyone saw. She clicked to another folder, the images changed. I arrived at the venue about 2 hours before the ceremony was scheduled to start. I like to get there early to test exposures, calibrate my equipment, scout angles. There is a terrace at the reception venue that overlooks the courtyard. Beautiful light. I was shooting through the window, adjusting my settings. Another click. The image that appeared made me grip the back of Carolyn's chair so tightly. My knuckles went white. Samuel, my son-in-law. In his tuxedo, not yet fully buttoned, pressed against a woman with vibrant red hair. Not Jacqueline, definitely not Jacqueline. Kissing her, not a friendly peck, not a goodbye to an old friend. His hands were in her hair, possessive and familiar. Her arms wrapped around his neck with the ease of long practice. Bodies pressed together with an intimacy that spoke of deep history, comfortable routine, real connection. 2 hours before his wedding to my daughter. How long before the ceremony? My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater, distant and strange. You are absolutely certain about the time. 2 hours, almost exactly. She pulled up a technical display showing metadata, timestamps down to the second, GPS coordinates that placed this moment at the venue. I was testing exposures through a window and captured this by accident. But it is real, Mr. Reynolds, and there are multiple shots. She clicked forward. Different angles of the same scene. Samuel and the red-haired woman locked together. In one photo, the woman's left hand was clearly visible, pressed against Samuel's chest. A wedding ring glinted on her finger. Gold band, diamond solitaire. Someone else's wife. The woman I managed, leaning closer despite wanting to look away. Do you know who she is? Carolyn shook her head. I don't recognize her from the guest list. She wasn't at the ceremony or reception, at least, not that I saw. But she was clearly there that afternoon, clearly with Samuel, clearly intimate with him. She pulled up another image, zooming in on Samuel's face. No confusion in his expression, no drunken stumble or momentary weakness, just confidence. Control, a man who knew exactly what he was doing and felt entirely comfortable doing it. 2 hours before marrying my daughter. Can you prove the timing? I asked, needing certainty, needing to be absolutely sure before my world finished crumbling. Beyond any doubt? Absolutely. Caroline opened multiple windows on her screen, showing me technical data I barely understood but recognized as legitimate. Digital fingerprints, file information, GPS coordinates that matched the venue's exact location, timestamps that couldn't be faked without sophisticated equipment she clearly didn't have. This is forensic, level evidence, Mr. Reynolds. It would hold up in any court, any investigation. These photos are genuine, unaltered, and precisely timed. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small flash drive, holding it out to me like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Everything is here. All the photos, all the metadata, full technical documentation. I made copies before I called you. I thought you might need proof, evidence, something concrete. I took the flash drive and closed my fist around it. The plastic felt warm from her hand. Don't apologize, Carolyn. You did exactly the right thing. I slipped the drive into my pocket. Thank you. Thank you for your courage and your integrity." The drive back to Paradise Valley passed in a fog. I gripped the steering wheel with both hands, stared at the road, but my mind was somewhere else entirely, somewhere dark and confusing where nothing made sense anymore. Samuel Fisher, investment banker, 42 years old, polished, articulate, successful, everything I'd wanted from my daughter, everything I'd thought she deserved. Kissing another woman, a married woman, 2 hours before his wedding. Not a mistake, not cold feet, not a momentary lapse. Calculated, deliberate, confident. Why marry Jacqueline at all? The question circled my thoughts like a vulture waiting for something to die. Why go through with a $65,000 wedding to a woman you were betraying just hours before the ceremony? Why make those vows? Why smile in those photos? Why accept congratulations and gifts and well wishes from 200 people while carrying that secret? What was the point? My truck knew the way home without conscious direction. Paradise Valley streets, my neighborhood, my driveway. The flash drive in my pocket felt heavy as a stone, dense with implications I was only beginning to understand. I pulled into my garage just after 11. The house looked identical to how I'd left it 2 hours ago. Same desert landscaping, same tile roof, same security light that needed fixing, same everything. But I wasn't the same. I'd crossed some invisible threshold and couldn't go back. I opened the front door. Benjamin was sprawled across my leather recliner, beer already in hand despite the hour. Some game show blaring at volume. He didn't look up, didn't acknowledge my entrance. "Hey, old man, grab me another beer while you are up." From upstairs, Wendy's voice, "Dad, is that you? I need to talk to you about money for a spa weekend. My friend Courtney is going and I really need this. I am so stressed." I stood in my own entryway with the flash drive burning a hole in my pocket, and something inside me that had been bending for years, maybe decades, finally snapped. My daughter's husband cheating 2 hours before their wedding. My other daughter living in my house rent-free for 4 years, demanding spa money. My not son-in-law ordering me to bring him beer while sprawled in my chair in my house in my living room. I closed the door behind me with a quiet click. They thought I was the same man who'd left this morning. They were catastrophically wrong. Sleep was impossible that night. I sat in my office past midnight with the flash drive from Carolyn on the desk beside my laptop, unable to stop looking at it, unable to bring myself to plug it in and see those images again on my own screen. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Samuel's face, confident, not guilty, not confused, just confident. I opened my laptop and pulled up the wedding budget spreadsheet I'd meticulously maintained. $65,000 total. Venue rental, $12,000. Catering, $18,000. Photographer, $4,000. Band, $6,500. Flowers, $4,500. Dress, $8,000. The numbers marched down the screen in neat columns, each one representing money I'd willingly spent because I'd thought I was giving my daughter the wedding of her dreams. But now I remembered something else, something specific that Jacqueline had insisted on: no registry. No traditional gifts of china or toasters or kitchen appliances. She'd been adamant about that. "Dad, we're starting fresh. We need flexibility. Cash is more practical." I'd thought she was being mature, practical, modern. Young couples these days didn't need 3 different sets of dishes, right? They needed money to set up their lives, to travel, to have experiences. Now I wondered what I'd actually paid for. I grabbed a legal pad and started writing. Numbers, dates, details that suddenly seemed wrong in ways I hadn't noticed at the time. The guest list had been 200 people, mostly my business associates, my friends, people who'd known Jacqueline since she was a child. Each wedding invitation had come back with an acceptance, and later, an envelope at the reception. I remembered the gift table, absolutely overflowing with envelopes. Jacqueline had hired someone specifically to collect them, count them, catalog them. Professional organization for what she'd claimed would be chaos. $45,000, she'd told me the total the week after the wedding, laughing about their good fortune while I'd smiled and felt proud that people had been so generous to the young couple. "Samuel and I are so blessed. Dad, everyone was so generous. We're overwhelmed." I wrote that number down, circled it, stared at it. Then I remembered something else. My business partner, Marcus Chen, had handed Samuel a check directly at the reception. I'd been standing right there, hadn't thought anything of it at the time. "Welcome to the family, son. Start your life right." Marcus had gripped Samuel's shoulder with genuine affection. Samuel had pocketed the check and smiled with what I'd interpreted as humble gratitude. "Thank you, sir. We won't forget this. Your generosity means everything." $15,000. I knew because Marcus had mentioned it later. Proud of his gift, happy to help a young couple he believed was starting out with nothing. $60,000 total from one wedding. From one day. Why marry Jacqueline at all? I stared at that question on my legal pad, my handwriting looking shaky and old in the lamplight. If Samuel had another woman, a woman wearing a wedding ring, clearly involved with him on a deep level, why go through with a $65,000 ceremony? Why smile in those photos? Why take vows that obviously meant nothing to him? Unless the vows didn't matter. Unless the money did, my stomach turned. The thought was ugly, cynical, the kind of thing I'd never have considered before today. But the evidence was right there. The timing, the cash gifts, the confidence on Samuel's face in those photographs. Had they planned this? Had my daughter and her new husband orchestrated an elaborate scam disguised as a wedding? That was crazy. That was me being paranoid and hurt and looking for patterns that weren't there. Jacqueline wouldn't do that. She was my daughter. I'd raised her. I knew her. Except, did I? When was the last time we'd had a real conversation that wasn't about money or what she needed or how I could help her? When was the last time she'd asked about my life, my health, my thoughts? The night dragged on. I made coffee around 3 in the morning, stood at my kitchen window watching the dark desert hills, and tried to make sense of a world that had shifted under my feet. Somewhere in Scottsdale, Jacqueline slept beside the man who'd betrayed her hours before their wedding. Or maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't care. That thought was worse than the first. The idea that they were in it together, that the wedding was a business transaction, and I'd been the fool who'd paid for the whole production. At 7, I showered and dressed, business casual again, left the house before Wendy woke up, before Benjamin could plant himself on my couch. I needed to verify something, needed to check one specific detail that had been nagging at me since last night. The bank opened at 9. I drove to the downtown Phoenix branch where I handled my business accounts. Professional territory, safe ground. The manager, Patricia Williams, greeted me warmly in her office. We'd worked together for 15 years. "Mr. Reynolds, what brings you in this morning?" I wanted to verify a check I wrote. Wedding gift for my daughter, $20,000. Want to make sure it cleared properly. Patricia pulled it up on her computer, efficient as always. "Let me see. Yes, here it is. Joint account for Samuel and Jacqueline Fisher. Check cleared without any issues." "Joint account," I said casually, keeping my voice light and curious. "When did they open that?" Patricia scrolled through her screen. "Looks like May 10th, 2 months before the wedding. Not years, not when they got engaged 2 months before the ceremony." "They must have been organized," I said. "Young people these days, they plan everything so carefully." Patricia smiled, oblivious to the ice spreading through my chest. "They certainly do. Everything happens so quickly now." I thanked her and left. In my truck, I sat with the engine running, staring at nothing. May 10th. They'd opened a joint account specifically to receive wedding gifts, planned it, coordinated it, set up the infrastructure to collect and manage the money they knew would be pouring in. This wasn't romance. This wasn't two young people building a life together. This was logistics. This was business. I drove home through late morning traffic, my mind churning through implications I didn't want to accept. When I pulled into the garage, the house looked quiet. Benjamin's beat-up Camry was there, the one he was always asking for money to fix. I entered through the garage door into the kitchen, planning to go straight to my office to think. Then, I heard Wendy's voice from upstairs. She was on the phone, volume turned up loud like always, either oblivious or indifferent to the fact that sound carried through the entire house. "Yeah, Dad looks suspicious lately." Her voice floated down from the second-floor landing. "I don't know, different somehow. But don't worry, sis. Ben and I can stretch this another 6 months easy. By then, he'll cave and buy us that condo just to get rid of us." I froze in the hallway. My hand found the wall, steadying myself. Jacqueline's voice came through the phone speaker, tinny but clear. "Perfect. I've got 2 more months of playing happy wife. Then I file. Half those gifts are legally mine in Arizona. Samuel already agreed to 60-40 split. Easiest $45,000 I ever made." My legs went weak. The hallway tilted. Wendy laughed, that casual cruel laugh she'd developed somewhere along the way. And Sam's little girlfriend doesn't even know about the plan. This is brilliant, Jackie. Dad's so busy feeling proud of your marriage. He doesn't see anything. Keep him distracted, keep him thinking everything's perfect. Already on it, Jacqueline said, her voice carrying that familiar confidence. Make him think you need something big. That way, when I ask for the house down payment, it won't seem excessive by comparison. Classic anchoring technique. Already on it, asked for a new car yesterday. He looked annoyed, but he'll come around. He always does. He is so predictable. I backed away from the staircase, silent, careful, each step measured and deliberate until I reached my office. I closed the door and leaned against it, my hands shaking uncontrollably. 2 daughters, both lying, both using me, one planning divorce to steal wedding money she'd collected under false pretenses. The other squatting in my house, running out the clock until I bought them off just to reclaim my own space. Playing happy wife. Easiest $45,000 I ever made. He is so predictable. I'd almost let it happen, almost written Jacqueline that $40,000 check for her house down payment. Almost I sat down at my computer and typed with trembling fingers. Property lawyer, Phoenix, Arizona. Robert Mackenzie's name appeared third in the search results. 25 years experience, real estate law, family trusts, asset protection. His office had an opening tomorrow morning at 9. I made the appointment. Then I sat back in my chair and stared at my closed office door. Beyond it, Wendy was probably still on the phone with Jacqueline, both of them laughing, both comfortable and confident. They had no idea what was coming. I didn't either. Not exactly, but tomorrow I'd start finding out. Tomorrow I would become something other than a wallet with a heartbeat. Tomorrow I would take my life back.